Now, as I mentioned at the top of the segment, U.S. Representatives Burgess Owens of Utah and Byron Donalds of Florida have introduced, to follow the leadership of the state of Florida, and introduced a resolution affirming the importance and impact of fatherhood in the development of America's children. Now, in their announcement of the resolution, the congressman highlighted how research shows that increased involvement of fatherhood in the home leads to education excellence, economic prosperity, and improved social mobility for children. And they further underscored how essential fathers are in an op-ed published today at foxnews.com. And with me now is the third author, of that article. It's Jack Brewer, a former NFL safety, now chairman of the Center for Opportunity Now at the America First Policy Institute. Jack, welcome to Washington Watch.
How's it going? Thanks for having me on.
Hey, we are so glad to have you. I want to tell us, I'm going to refer to the article that you wrote, you co-wrote in Fox News this week. You highlighted the fact that in America, 18.5 million children grow up without their fathers. That makes the U.S. the world leader in fatherlessness. What do you think the impact of this is?
I mean, we see it in our streets. I mean, we saw it during the riots. We see it when we see the run-ins with law enforcement. We see it in our racial disparities. We see it in our educational disparities, with our reading and math proficiency levels that mirror third world countries in a lot of areas. It's really the one crisis that's affecting our entire nation. And it's been something that my foundation, that's been around for over 16 years, has been working with hands-on. I literally just left a juvenile today and was at 2 juveniles yesterday. And you walk into these juvenile facilities where these young men have committed a lot of time violent crimes. Some of them have committed sex crimes, but there's one factor that remains the same across the board, and that's 85 to 90% of those guys and those kids behind bars are fatherless. And so if we're not willing to do something about that, if we're not willing to do what the Bible teaches us to do, stand for righteousness and order, if we continue to be a nation that has really blurred the order of God, blurred what the family means, blurred what the role of a father is, which is the head of the household. And the reason why the father's the head of the household is because they are there to instill that discipline and not spare the rod and not hate their sons. And so right now we have a lot of children that don't have any discipline, which means they don't have any fear of God. They don't have a fear of a father, and they don't have a fear of God. And that's a dangerous, dangerous combination whenever you have a society that has so much access to social media and music and entertainment and all these other things that can penetrate the hearts and mind of the children.
Yeah, that's a great point. And what we're doing at a policy level is so often dealing with the symptoms of the problem. We're trying to deal with poverty. We're trying to deal with crime problems. We're trying to deal with a lack of educational achievement. Do you agree that we are not yet giving enough attention to the root cause, things like fatherhood?
I agree, and I know firsthand what can be done when you put a positive male influence into an underserved child's life. We do it every day at the Jack Brewer Foundation with our American Heroes Fatherhood Initiative. We go in and get our hands dirty with kids that are the most vulnerable, that are at the highest risk. And so oftentimes we like to talk about things that affect our own family, our own children. But it's a new day in America where we're going to have to start standing up for the most underserved, like the Bible tells us to do, and not just about the kids that we have, but also the kids that are outside in our communities that are underserved, that don't have any choice. The government cannot solve these issues. These issues must be solved by citizens that are doing their own work in the community and taking up the responsibility of uplifting the least of these.
We're talking to Jack Brewer. He's the chairman of the Center for Opportunity Now at the America First Policy Institute. And Jack, part of my thinking about this issue of fatherlessness is that it's closely connected to the sexual revolution, and that this is one of the results of a sexual ethic that we have been pushing for a long time in this country, that you should just do what feels good and not have to worry about the consequences. Do you agree that the issue of fatherlessness is closely connected to the sexual revolution and the sexual ethic, this unbiblical sexual ethic that we've been pushing on young kids for a long time?
No doubt. It's the direct result of that. It's the reason why Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed. I mean, it started to look a lot like what America is turning into, with sexualizing children and all these new loose terms and these loose gender identities and no definition, and really going against everything that God has ordained as a society, and actually putting these things into law. I think that's when you go overboard. It's one thing to believe it, but it's another thing to actually put an antichrist agenda into law. And so now you're blurring righteousness, and then the kids don't understand truth. And so if your kids don't understand truth, and that truth comes from the Word of God, then you're going to have a lot of issues. And you're going to be able to have a society that sexualizes the masses the way that they're doing now, and not have the pushback. And it also stems from the universities. I mean, the universities that are training these woke, liberal-minded teachers, that you can choose anything that you want to choose, and that freedom means that you don't have to depend on the Word of God as your truth. Then you have that population now raising and teaching our children, and that's what we have. If you look at our public schools, I mean, the issues that are going on now are just unimaginable. Kids do not have any discipline. If they do, they can commit crimes in school and not be held accountable. They don't suspend kids the way that they used to. They need to bring the paddle back to our school, because that's the only place that you could hope to be able to instill some discipline into our children, because unfortunately many of our parents aren't doing it and our schools aren't doing it. And so at the end of the day, as a society, we're failing the most vulnerable populations in our communities.
Yeah. I think you're exactly right, Jack, that when we teach kids to follow their heart, the result of that is that we end up with a lot of kids without fathers. In about 30 seconds, we got a lot of people who care. What should people who want to help solve this problem do?
I can tell you firsthand, you can come see us at the Jack Brewer Foundation. We're based down in Florida. We do work all over the country. You can go on, follow our work. We are in the prisons. We are in the juveniles. We're working with the most vulnerable, hands-on. If you ever want to volunteer, we can show you firsthand what our country is facing, because we're literally on the front line.
Jack Brewer, we are out of time, but we are grateful for your work and your time today. Thanks so much for being with us.
God bless you.
We will.